Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Friday, it's the Healing Circle, a time where we sit with colleagues and friends and leaders in the health industry, the health business, the health field, and talk about what makes us whole, what challenges we experience, how we overcome, how we grow, improve ourselves, our families, our community, the world. Well, I'm pleased to open the program by inviting my colleague and co-host and partner in this, Dr. Briana Garrett Akinsanya. We call her affectionately Dr. B. Dr. B, how you doing? Welcome. Good to see you. Unmute for me. You have to unmute.
I said, thank you so much, Baba Al. I'm so happy to be here again with you to talk about issues that are important to our community and to the world, in fact. So I'm grateful to be here.
Well, thank you. And we do a special protocol. And before I do that, I want to invite people to support this program, to be a part of the conversation. You can do that by becoming a subscriber. You subscribe by going to YouTube/InsightNewsMN. That's our channel. And if you subscribe there, you'll get notifications, information, and hopefully be a part of building this communications network. Just so you know, we're streaming across 2 YouTube platforms, the one I mentioned, but also the YouTube platform of the Black Press of America, Black Press USA. We also stream on the Facebook pages for Insight News and Black Press USA. We're streaming live to Twitter and live to LinkedIn as well. So our objective is to connect, to communicate, and find ways to be with you, to have you be with us in this conversation. What's our mission? Our mission is to document our thoughts, our feelings, our exploration, our commitment to health and healing, to innovation, and to our own, peace and well-being, individually and collectively as a people in the world, to show ourselves to be intentional co-authors of the future. We are working to build something that works for us and works for the planet itself by recognizing our interconnectedness. Well, with that, before we go any further, Dr. B, I'm going to ask you to instruct our audience and visitors in the protocol of the day. And you can introduce our first guest as well.
Okay, thank you so very much. What I'd like to say is that every week when we come to the Healing Circle, we do this so we can just take time to breathe. And as we breathe and think about our own healing as a community, we use African ritual to kind of center our conversation. So today, as we sit in various locations, we imagine ourselves in a circle, because most business in our indigenous culture occurs in the space of a circle. And the circle means that everyone in the circle has equal access to the center, the space of power. We have equal access to have voice in the circle. And in addition to the circle, we're respectful. And we're respectful of our elders. We honor them because for us, nobody got here on our own. Somebody worked their way, prayed our way, and hoped our way into existence. And those are the shoulders that we stand on. And we honor our elders because they're closest to our ancestors. And we honor our ancestors because they're closest to our Creator. So today, as we honor elders and ancestors and our Creator, we step into this sacred space of knowing, where all of us have wisdom. All of us, regardless of our social standing, have wisdom and gifts to share in the circle. And we happen to believe that this is a divine appointment, that everyone who should be here will be here. And everyone who hears this call out for justice and wellness will receive what they need to receive. So in the circle, we are orderly and we have a virtual talking stick. And the talking stick means that that's your turn to talk. And we try to go in circle because African people are an orderly people. And if you have something to say, you can ask for the circle. Or if the spirit moves, you can pass the circle to whomever you feel needs a circle at that moment. So we thank you for, the talking stick at that moment.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
as we sit in the circle and we pass our talking stick, we share it and we move forward. And I would like to pass the talking stick back to our Baba Al, who is the creator of this wonderful experience of Conversations with Al McFarlane. So here you
Well,
go,
great.
Brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take the talking stick, Dr. B. So, today is Veterans Day, and we have the pleasure and the honor of having the esteemed uh, Douglas L. Garrett, a retired U.S. Army major, on the program today, and your brother. And so I remember him being with us before. So glad to see him again. Brother Garrett, Brother Douglas, good afternoon. How are you?
Super fantastic, totally blessed, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, let me do this in order to get this ball rolling. And in honor of Veterans Day, let me pass the talking stick to you to have you just bring what's top of mind with you today.
Well, it's very interesting that you asked that today, looking at where we are in today, what's going on nationally and internationally. And it makes me think about why I even joined the Army to start with. And it
Mm.
was 50-50 in a sense of it was 50% patriotism, but it was 50% opportunity driven in regards to where we were in the 1970s. I've spanned four wars or from Vietnam to Desert Storm, and I participated in most of those. And so I'm just overly and abundantly blessed to have gone through that, and I'm able to speak to you guys today. And so when you look at the military, for especially young African Americans at the time, that was an opportunity for us to prepare ourselves for what was to come in the future. It allowed me to go to college and allowed me to continue my life as a father and a husband. And so I attribute all that, but by the grace of God, because there were so many obstacles along the way that that had supernatural it was supernatural to me. It was nothing that I did. It was how I was covered by my elders
Mm.
and my friends and my family. And
Mhm.
so I'm appreciative to celebrate this day, not only for the sake of freedom for everybody, but the fact of opportunity for everybody in regards to the military. I often tell people that it gives you an opportunity. I think everybody should spend some time in the military just to get an idea of what it is that we experience over the time. It's a character builder for sure, but it's also a character breaker. So it gives you an opportunity to really figure out where you are in life and where it is that you want to go. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate the struggles too, because from the struggles came my success. So I just love this day for what it means to be represented by. And I just, it's hard to believe sometimes. And I told my wife the other day, it's really hard to fathom that I spent 24 years in the military.
Hmm.
And so it puts us in a position right now where I could retire early, or in this case, my wife is going to school right now, going to college on my GI Bill. So many opportunities that stretched over a span of 35 years
Wow.
that it's still paying back. And it also gives us an opportunity to know that young people, there is a chance out there. College is not for everybody, but once you get into the military, I saw, especially when I started out as an enlisted man, so that's important. I started out as a buck private, E1, and from that opportunity, I remember I was getting ready to re-enlist, and I was deciding, how I was going to do it. And I never forget this. This young major came in, and he had so much stuff. He'd had 5 Purple Hearts, and I had gone. I was in officer records at the time. I had gone to get something, and when I came back, he was sitting at my desk, and he asked me a very pointed question. And he said, "Do you know the difference between you and I?" I said, yeah, you're a major and I'm a sergeant. He said, no, he said, education.
Mm-hmm.
Said, so I see the enlistment papers. He said, why don't you just try going to college and coming back through ROTC? He said, because you're officer material.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so one person can make a difference in your life. And so I want to pay it forward to some of not only young Black men, but young men and women as a whole, to let them know that if you're out there struggling at that certain stage of development in your life, the military is an opportunity for you to sort of straighten your path. And so I appreciate this day, and I appreciate the opportunity. And Brother Al, I'm going to pass the stick back to you.
Well, I'm going to pass it to another Garrett. Thank you. What a wonderful, I've got a gazillion questions and comments for that come out of what you were saying. I appreciate everything you said so much. I saw Dr. B saying, wow, I can see her, you know, in the side there, and equally mesmerized by your powerful testimony. But Austin Garrett is here. Brother Austin Garrett, welcome to the conversation. I'm going to pass the talking stick to you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Dr. B, Brother McFarlane, and my little brother Douglas. So proud of him for the job he did in the military. I was inducted into the armed forces back in 1968. I too was going to Texas Tech, and I was in ROTC. I got married too young, and things were really chaotic. We were very poor. We had to move in with her family and then move in with my family. And then my grades fell at Texas Tech. I'm just telling you the way it happened. Mm. And I was not financially able. So my grades went down and I got inducted. That's the way they did it back then. If your grades fell too low, they would reclassify you. I can't remember what the classification was now, but I remember my mother getting a letter and how she cried when she read it. Greetings from President Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States. You are hereby inducted into the armed forces of the United States of America. And she read that letter. I don't know where it is now, but she cried, and they knew. It's not the same as being drafted, but that's the first step in the draft process. So you can either wait till somebody picks you, or you can go and try to join up. So I joined the Air Force because I wanted to get into electronics and learn some new things. And some of my friends had been in the Army during the Vietnam era, and they didn't come back too good. In fact, some of them died. Some of them on the wall of death in Washington, D.C., which I had an opportunity to visit a few years back. And I wept as I saw their names on the wall. Some of them I was in the service with at the time they died. And some died before I got there. It's been a hard road. Anyway, I joined the Air Force and I scored very high on electronics and administration. My lowest score was mechanics. That's where they put me. They put me in mechanics because that's what the service needed. I became a 43151A, which was a 43131A. I was elevated to a 51A, aircraft mechanic on prop planes, reciprocating aircraft, which that's what they were using in Vietnam. Tan Son Nhut, all over Thailand. Da Nang is where I was stationed in Vietnam. And I could spend the whole day telling you about my airplane because I love that plane so much. So I eventually went to Thailand, and then from there I volunteered for Vietnam service. I wanted to do the right thing. I was very patriotic. Like Douglas said, he's telling the truth. Our family reared us to be strong, patriotic people, regardless of race, creed, color, or any other thing. We were true-blooded Americans willing to die for our country. That being said, if I can hold back the tears, I knew I wasn't coming back. I did 2 tours over in Vietnam, 2 short tours, not 1 year at a time. I'm not going to lie about it, but they call it TDY, They needed us in the combat zone really bad, and we got a lot of rocket attacks up in Da Nang. They call it Rocket City. I knew I wasn't coming back. Yet I did my job as faithfully as I could. If I had to do it over again, I'd do the same thing. Yes, like Douglas was saying, it'll make you or it'll break you. Some of my friends there didn't come back. Some had mental problems, diseases. There's a lot of things that'll kill you in the jungle, other than just the bullet.
Yeah.
The stress and the strain. So I served my country well. I got a dishonorable discharge. I made it back home, and I served as I got sent to a base in Denver, Colorado, Laurie Air Force Base, and lo and behold, they didn't have. Laurie had been closed. Their airfield was closed. They didn't have any aircraft there. So they stationed us out at Buckley Air National Guard Base, and I ended up cross-training into instructional systems development. I became a technical instructor. Kept going to school, and by the grace of God in the U.S. Air Force, I got my first degree, my bachelor's degree, and right after, I didn't quite finish when I got out of the service, but at 6 years, 7 months, and 26 days, I felt I'd had enough. I did have an opportunity to go into officer training school, but I chose to just go ahead and live a regular life. The times were different. The war was not popular. People hated us.
That's right.
And I couldn't grow an afro if I tried. But the little hair I did get, or beards and stuff, they would, the military really shunned us. Shunned up. They didn't like that. So anyway, I went on back to school, and I finally got my degree and my family. And I'll tell you what, it's been a wrecking crew in terms of my social life, my family life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I heard a lot of people.
Yeah.
I had some things wrong with me that I didn't know about.
That's right.
I did suffer from PTSD.
That's right.
I did suffer from Agent Orange.
That's right.
And just this week, after 50 years, they finally sent me some money for the Agent Orange by the grace of God and President Joe Biden. Man, wow. I guarantee you, I didn't expect to cry today. I'm proud to be a veteran.
Amen.
And I'm proud of veterans. And I learned a long time ago that freedom is not free.
Teach.
You have to be willing to die for what you believe in.
Teach, brother.
And those aren't just words. I literally lived it. And again, I'm grateful to the United States of America. It's not perfect. We have a lot of flaws. But I'm telling you, as far as I can tell you, being in other parts of the world, it's the best thing going. I will fight to survive. I will fight to uphold our democracy and our Constitution. I still live by that, and I should die living by that.
Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Dr. B, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so moved by what I see. And these are the shoulders I stand on. These are my elders. These are my big brothers. And I remember now why I'm like I am. And it's a powerful thing. And I know, Brother Al, you have a story too, because Douglas was in the Army. Austin was in the Air Force. And you, my brother, you were in the Navy.
That's correct.
What about your story?
I joined the Navy in high school with the idea of a 2x6 program, they called it, where you do 2 years of active duty and 6 years reserve duty totally, or 2 and 4, total of 6, and planned to go through college doing reserve duty. And I had the intention or desire to do an officer program. But my experience coming from Kansas City and going to Atlanta to Morehouse College was that I came across members of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and was there and got involved in political, social activism on campus, 18, And I developed through reading and through exposure an affinity for the revolutionary urgings and thoughts emerging out of the Black Power movement, Black consciousness movement, the protest movement, and had a personal point of conflict in believing that the decision I made when I was 17 was the right decision now that I'm 19 and a freshman in college at Morehouse College. And now that I'm listening to people like Julian Bond, now that I'm marching with people like Dr. Martin Luther King on a protest out of the campus going down to support Julian Bond, who was not seated by the Georgia legislature, and he was not seated because he opposed the war in Vietnam. And so I found myself in that conflict. At the end of the day, after my freshman year at Morehouse, I ended up having to do the 2 years of active duty, served aboard a ship, did a Mediterranean cruise, a Caribbean cruise, and had two feelings. One is that I'm a kid. I'm 18, 17. And I'm away from home. You're learning, to be an adult, to be responsible. You're learning a trade. I ended up being like a navigator, quartermaster, ship's navigation on the destroyer that I was a part of on. But to be traveling to the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, 18 years old, no mom, no dad, and a pocket full of money. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, so that was my growing up, right? Mama wasn't around, daddy wasn't around, except for in my mind. They were in my conscious, but I had the money in my hand. And Barcelona, Naples, Athens, Greece, Crete, Malta, and all over the Caribbean. So that was a growing experience. There was camaraderie among the Black men on my ship. Yes. The story I just told someone today was that I never saw any combat. The only combat I saw was every time we went to shore in Crete or Barcelona, anywhere, as soon as white boys had a drink or two, they felt entitled to talk crazy. And there were 6 Black people on my ship, 7 maybe. 6 we could count as Black. There were 7 people, Black people, but those of us that were in that 6 had a covenant. Before they finished saying the word, bust them upside their head. Attack. So if they get to where they feel they are comfortable and entitled to call us out of our name and use the N word, before they got to the G, they should be on their back. And that's what we did. So that's my war story. But so now I'm 76 years old. So I look back at that and I don't begrudge the fact that things unfolded the way they did. It was part of my growing, part of my making, part of my becoming me. You mentioned, Brother Douglas, magical, mystical moments. I had one in Malta. We were coming out of a bar and there was one guy on my ship from New York who was like a giant, like almost 6'5", 6'6", big guy, shaped like the cartoon character Baby Huey. And he was a nice guy, the gentlest guy. His best buddy was a guy that was like 4 feet tall from New York as well, a Latino guy. But this guy, the big guy, was so big, everybody liked to pick on him because he was just amazingly big and amazingly gentle, but he was tough. And once you picked on him, he started slinging you and everything else around. Mm-hmm. And we were in this one bar, and somehow people did something. So he started throwing people left and right. The 4 of us with him formed a wedge around him, fought our way out of the bar into the street, told his buddy, go that way to the ship. We're going to go this way. We started running. And after 2 or 3 blocks of running from the shore patrol, we stopped and said, hey, man, why are we running? Me and one more guy. Why are we running? And he said, I don't know. We didn't do anything. No, we didn't. Stop. We were approached by 10, 12 guys from the patrol, batons, up, saying, halt, halt, halt. And all of a sudden, Brother Douglas, the Spirit spoke through me. Mm-hmm. And words that talked about the condition of our people in the world and the problems that the scenario we were experiencing meant, and why they were doing what they were doing, why it was appropriate from their point of view for them to subdue me, who had done no wrong. Anyways, I talked, and it was like the sun stood still. Everything stopped. And if they were in mid-stroke, it stopped. And finally, a white officer walked up behind them and said, "Who are you guys?" Told them my names, "Go back to your ship, leave them alone." That was a magical moment. I could have been killed right then, could have been beat to death on the streets of Malta. But listen, let me do this. If you don't mind, I want to broaden our conversation. We've got another special guest that you all are going to love to interact with because she's doing work. And I want to build a connection between our lived experiences, our stories, our leadership, our service, and the needs for our community that we're all concerned about going forward. I want to introduce you to Briana Payton. Briana Payton is the Associate Director of Policy and Advocacy for the Chicago Appleseed Center for Fair Courts. And prior to joining Appleseed, she was a Senior Legislative Advocacy Coordinator at the Chicago Community Bond Fund and the Policy Coordinator for the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice. Now, in these positions, she collaborated with organizers and impacted people and attorneys and policy experts to pass and protect the Pretrial Fairness Act, which makes Illinois the first state in the country to end money bond. At Appleseed, she continues supporting Pretrial Fairness Act implementation and does that as a member of the Coalition to End Money Bond and the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice. And she's supporting other initiatives that advocate criminal legal system reform. She's got a BA in sociology with minors in African American Studies and Spanish from Princeton University. She's got her master's degree from University of Chicago Crown School of Social Work, Policy and Practice, and she participated in Transforming Justice Program of Study. Briana, welcome to the conversation. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm going to do two things. One is have you speak briefly about your work. And then if you want to address or comment, I'd like your reaction as a young woman to these three seasoned gentlemen talking about our war story, war experience. I was moved by Brother Austin's declaration about his commitment to the principle of democracy and being committed to something that you're willing to die for. Moved by the story of service and excellence that Brother Douglas presented. And I'm obviously moved by the work that Dr. B is engaged in. So we're inviting you into this family conversation because we know you're going to add and help illuminate. So I'm going to pass the talking stick to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate being able to hear your different experiences as veterans, and we honor you today and we thank you for your service. It definitely resonates with me. My granddad on my dad's side is a veteran, a Navy veteran at that, and hearing you all talk about not only the ways that you sacrificed and the ways that you've taken advantage of the benefits to advance your lives and the lives of your family since coming back. That resonates with me after seeing we call him Big M on my dad's side, seeing my Big M go back to school and get his psychology degree after working for FedEx for many years and being a veteran. And then also the part about, experiencing racism while serving, because I remember some years back, my Big M sat with me and shared with me some pretty disturbing instances of serving his country and serving in the Navy and being attacked with verbal and physical assaults due to racism. And nobody should have to go through that, especially while making such an immense sacrifice for other people. And so we definitely honor you all today for your sacrifice and even for being willing to come back and share your truth and your experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So talk about your work, what you all have done in Chicago with the ending of money bonds is phenomenal. Give us the background, the context, and what does it mean for our people?
Yes, absolutely. So the end of Money Bond is a momentous occasion here in Illinois, and it's a momentous occasion for our country as well, because Illinois is the first state in the union to completely abolish the practice of money bond. And so that is getting rid of the practice of jailing people before trial simply based on what amount of money they can afford to pay. This is a practice that has been around for decades as a very blatant and glaring injustice in our criminal legal system. It has been widely accepted and continues to be widely accepted in most of the country as just the way things are done. But the truth is, the United States is one of only 2 countries that actually still has money-based pretrial incarceration. It's us and the Philippines continuing to carry on this archaic practice of making decisions about whether someone is in their home or in a cage before trial on the basis of money. And within a country with a history as marred as ours in terms of the relationship between Black people especially, and money and freedom, I am so shocked at the willingness to just let it go on that Black people are disproportionately continually having to pay for their freedom in 2023.
What's the consequence of the money bail? What's the actual sort of number impact? How are we impacted differently through the process, the system?
So just to give general context, there are about 2 million people incarcerated in jails across the United States today 500,000 people incarcerated in jails across the states today, 2 million people incarcerated in general. And the people that are incarcerated in jails are incarcerated before trial. In Illinois alone, about 250,000 people, or 250,000 people, spend time in the jails on an annual basis. And people spend anywhere from a few days to a few years in jail. I have heard directly from people who have been in Cook County Jail for 5, 6, 10 plus years waiting for a trial. And in terms of who is affected, it absolutely disproportionately affects Black and Latino and poor communities, because Black people, due to implicit and explicit racial bias in the criminal legal system and in the minds of system actors, are the most likely to be given an unaffordable money bond, and the least likely, due to the racial wealth gap, to be able to pay it. So that causes Black people to be the most highly represented in carceral institutions. In Cook County Jail here in Chicago, the jail is about 75% made up of Black people, majority Black men, and Black people only make up about 23% of the population in Chicago, in Cook County, just to give you a sense of how disproportionate that is. And in some of the other counties, the populations and the numbers are smaller, but the disparities can actually be even worse.
And so, what are some of the misconceptions people have about the Pretrial Fairness Act? What can you clear up on that?
Absolutely. So there was a multi-million-dollar misinformation campaign against this legislation about a year ago. And it didn't just spread throughout Illinois, it actually spread all across the country. People were under the impression that we had passed what was being referred to as a purge law here in Illinois, and that it was going to result in all the jail doors flying open and people being indiscriminately let out of jail. But that is not what the Pretrial Fairness Act does. The Pretrial Fairness Act gives us actually a more reliable system to use to make pretrial determinations, because what's actually unsafe is the money bond system, because it is a complete gamble. When a judge sets a money bond, they are making their best guess in setting an amount that they think the person will or will not be able to afford. You can never reliably assume what somebody can or cannot afford. So I have heard from a woman personally who sat in jail for months on a $100 money bond because she nor anybody in her network had it or came to pay it for her. And I'm sure the judge set that money bond assuming she would be out the same day. Meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse shot up protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and killed 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
The judge set $1 million money bond, likely assuming that he could not pay it, but white supremacists banded together to raise the money, and sure enough, he got out. And so it's a very unreliable system when a judge makes a decision, but at the end of the court date, nobody knows what's actually going to happen. This is especially dangerous for survivors in situations like domestic violence, where money bonds are set and you just don't know if or when anyone is going to be in or out of jail. What the Pretrial Fairness Act has done is actually given us a system that takes money out of the picture so that we can make very clear, reliable decisions based on the facts of each person's individual case, and actually assess release decisions based on whether anyone can be safely released and not pose a risk to other people. If someone does not pose a risk to anyone else, and if they are not a high likelihood of fleeing prosecution, there is no reason why their liberty should be taken away before trial, especially on the basis of money.
You're going to be speaking here in Minnesota next week. Talk to us about the event and invite people to show up.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, let me make sure that I'm getting this name right. It's the Minnesota Criminal Justice Research Center, I believe, is having a conference next Thursday and Friday. It's going to be a hybrid conference, virtual and in person. And I have the privilege of giving the keynote to speak about our campaign to end money bond here in Illinois and lessons that can be shared with the efforts that are going to be going forth in Minnesota to try to make some changes to the pretrial system there. So I'm very excited. I'll be giving the keynote address on the evening of Thursday night, and there will be all types of programming throughout the day on Friday as well. So anyone who is in the area would be more than welcome to join.
Great. Before I pivot again, I wanted to find a little bit more out about you. I mentioned your education and your work, but what's your personal story? You talked about your grandpa. Talk about your family. Who is Briana Payton in the context of her genealogy, of the legacy she represents and reflects?
Sure. I love that question. I'm not often asked that in the interviews that I do. So I am originally from Detroit, Michigan. That's where I was born and raised for part of my childhood. And then my family moved outside of the city for the latter part of my childhood and adolescence and early adulthood. My parents are Mark Lynn Payton II, Angela Whitaker Payton. My middle name is after my mom. Her name is Angela. My middle name is Angelique. My mom is from Detroit. She went to Renaissance High School and went to the University of Michigan, where she double majored in political science and African American studies. Fun fact, we were both presidents of the gospel choir when we were in undergrad. And she went to law school at the Chicago Kent College of Law. And funny enough, I'm also applying to law school this fall. While she was in law school, she met my dad, who is also from Chicago. He was working in the building where she was staying while she was attending law school at the time, and he actually had prior experience with the criminal legal system. And so the work that I'm doing right now is very much full circle when I think about the things that my father has gone through. They met when my mom was in law school, and he was in the process of turning his life in a different direction. And so they got together, they had me, they moved to Detroit and raised our family there. And I have been incredibly supported by them throughout my life. And my Big M, I mentioned, we call him Big M because his first name is Mark Lynn Payton Sr. Mm-hmm. And so Big Mark, because he said he never considered himself old enough to be called grandpa or anything like that. So yes, he is a veteran. I'm trying to remember if it was World War II, or I don't want to get the war wrong. I think it was Vietnam that he fought in.
Probably, yeah.
Not World War II. I don't think he's old enough for that. But he was a veteran. He worked for FedEx, and he still lives here in Illinois, in Dalton, Illinois, and with my step grandma Jolynn. I went to Princeton for undergrad. I moved here to Chicago after graduating, and have gotten a chance to do work that feels very much like a full circle moment when I think about where my father in particular has been. And I look forward to continuing to do this work and to make my family proud.
Well, I'm proud of you. We're all proud of you. I can tell you that right now. Let's take a break and come back. And when we come back, I'm going to pass the talking stick around and just have reflections, thoughts. Each of us can move the direction that we feel at that time. We'll be right back. I'm Al McFarlane. Are you or someone you know recovering financially from the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdown, or any other reason? If so, help is available. Findhelp.org is a site to find a wide range of resources, including food, medical care, and more. The best part is based on your zip code. Visit findhelp.org, enter your zip code and the service you need. You'll get a map directing you to the organizations that can help you. Help is waiting at findhelp.org. If you need help starting anew, findhelp.org is the site for you. And we're back. So I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Friday. It's the Healing Circle. My co-host, Dr. B, Dr. Briana Garrett, Dr. Tanya is here. Dr. B, thank you for inviting the Garrett All-Stars to be on the show today. And I really love the fact that we've got this intergenerational thing going on with Briana Payton, and we're sharing these stories. Let me pass the talking stick back to you, Dr. B, just for contextualizing, and then maybe you'll share it or pass it on.
I appreciate getting the talking stick, and I am very proud of Briana and what she's accomplishing, and of course my big brothers Austin and Douglas Garrett, who are role models for me. And when I call names of elders and shoulders I stand on, I always think of them and the many things they had to deal with when I was their little sister. It was amazing how we grew up in such a way that we loved each other so much, and we also loved our country and our communities. And that's a full circle, as Sister Briana was saying. When you see where you come from and it comes back to you, it's like a blessing, and it lets you know there's a divine appointment for you on this planet, and that you're fulfilling hopes and dreams of people who went before you. One of the reasons we wanted to also talk about this, I have this program today on honoring our veterans, is also to think about, in the Bible, it talks about wars and rumors of war. And so now we're in the middle of a space where we have Hamas bombing Israel bombing Palestinians, innocent babies, nurseries, hospitals, in order to get to Hamas and say, that's the only choice they have. So the staff at the mental health center today, we started our staff meeting talking about who we are in the position as healers in a space where we're seeing and observing war and rumors of war and the anxiety it may bring, and our Black soldiers who are presently serving, as well as those who have gone in the past, who've seen how war emerges out of a conflict that may not even make sense to everyone. So part of the discussion today, I'm hoping, will take us back to that circle of social justice, the circle of what is our role as human beings as we address the impending doom, not even impending, current doom that we witness internationally on the lives of people who are at risk. And for my own opinion, I share that I understand the pain and the honest outrage that Israelis may experience right now. And one of my students is in Israel. He's from there right now, and I've talked to him back and forth about the war and the impact on him. And he was one of the first people in our counseling center. He was there as an intern, and he would go out to the social justice marches, and he would come back and tell me what was going on in the streets. And he really has always been honed on fairness. And he expressed to me how disappointed he was in the way things have been going. And at the same time, I hear our leaders, not our leaders as well as theirs, saying, let's get rid of Hamas, let's get rid of them off the face of the earth. But thinking about the political component, the political science component of looking at how Israelis pushed Palestinians back to this Gaza Strip, this little tiny piece of the whole place that was once all theirs. And now they have nowhere to go. They can't go to the sea because they're forbidden from going that direction because their other ships are there. They can't go anywhere. And that when we hear Israel say, we're going to get rid of Hamas no matter what, and they should have thought about the impact on Palestinians before they bombed us, and we're going to get rid of them. And I just keep seeing it as, this is an analogy I'm just going to use, a house full of roaches. But you're going to burn down the house to get rid of the roaches. And meanwhile, the people who live there, the inhabitants of the house, they get damaged. So I think when I hear Israelis say we're going to get rid of the Hamas no matter where they are, and I'm sorry they're under nurseries, I'm sorry they're under libraries, I'm sorry they're under apartment complex or places like that, or schools, but we got to get to this. And so to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And every client that I've seen in my clinic that I've personally seen has talked about these issues we're talking about today, from our own incarceration as Black people, as soldiers who go to war, and as citizens who witness something we have no control over. So all of this is part of what we're talking about in community, and they kind of all merge together, like you're saying, Brother Al. And so I kind of like to pass the talking stick back to my brother Douglas and then Austin to hear what are they thinking when they think about this war overseas that has been meaningful, for them, especially as soldiers. So, Brother Douglas, you got the talking stick.
Thank you, Bravada, and the rest of the panel. I share some mixed emotions. I look at it in three different ways. I look at it individually. I look at it from a military view, but I also look at it, the bigger picture is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
I just so happen to be looking at two movies that really sort of swayed my opinion about that. And I want you guys to write these movies down because they're very important. The first one is called Exodus, and that's with Paul Newman. And the second movie is called Cast a Giant Shadow, and that's with Kirk Douglas. And they talk about the history of Palestinians and the Jews, starting from the 60s and bring it up to today. And, I would tell you that this thing is like a vicious circle that will never end. From a military standpoint, don't understand the strategy that we're using right now, where we're going in and killing innocent people. And I personally, from a military standpoint, don't believe, and that's almost a genocide as far as I'm concerned, because you know what the results are going to be. Intelligence has gone too far for us to have to attack them that way. So I think there's an ulterior motive here that no one is talking about, because there are better ways of doing that. I've been in that area in the military of counterintelligence. I was in Panama and Honduras dealing with the drug issue where I was in counterintelligence. And there's a lot of things that we can do to eliminate collateral damage. Hamas is a cancer, but what do you want to do? I just can't fathom young children being killed and maimed over something that's been going on for at least a half century. So in my opinion, there are better ways of doing it. And I don't think even the politicians are speaking the truth. I think they're speaking what they think people want to hear, but there's a deeper thing here that I don't know. I just have a feeling that we could do this a little bit better. And, the only way we can fix this is at the voting booth. Mm-hmm. That's how you fix it. And one thing too, I want to share, and I heard two things from my brother Austin and from you, Brother Al, about being in the military. One thing I'd like to share with you guys is that when I became an officer, I really didn't have an identity, because during the 70s, during the DAPs and all that kind of stuff like that, the Black soldiers wanted me to be Black. But on the other side, the white soldiers knew I was Black. So I didn't get respect on any end. That's a really hard road to cross when you're trying to find out how you can best fit into a system that's really structural racism. Although it was better than society, it was still there, because the people in the military is a reflection of society. Mm-hmm. So those same people from the South in the military are the same people from the South. But when you're in a situation where you talk about PTSD, I've been diagnosed with PTSD by the VA. And the thing that I mentioned that a psychologist really took a grip on us when I said I was a man without a country. I didn't know whether to be black or white. I bled green.
Mm.
You know, so that leads me back to a conversation I had with my son about legacy. And I think Sister Briana mentioned it and Brother Al mentioned it too. As I get to the twilight years of my life, legacy becomes very important to me, not just in my family, but external to that family. We have to set an example that will set our young people up to be successful in life. We're at that age and stage of development where there are certain generations that feel entitled and don't want to do the hard work. So, Sister Provider, you talk about standing on the shoulders. That burden has really become heavy for us baby boomers and this generation thereafter. So I just think we're in a situation right now when you look at war and the rumors of war, is that this is just a tip of the iceberg of what's going to happen. I mean, we're talking about Ukraine. It is another instance. That's quieted down since Israel has started that thing, but we're still dealing with the same issue with Russia and Ukraine, all being supported by China and Russia. That's the bigger picture. You know, the bigger picture is that this thing I'm hoping don't go global, and I hope it doesn't start a bigger war. But we're spending in America billions and billions and billions of dollars on equipment and weapons, but we have people starving on the streets. I don't get it. You know, so I would just say that I'm concerned that the bigger picture is going to show itself sooner than later. And people need to prepare themselves spiritually, first and foremost. And so at this point, I'm going to pass the talking stick to my brother, Austin.
Thank you, Douglas. And this is deep and heavy. I don't have time to really get into all the feelings and thoughts I have on this, but I do agree with a lot of things you said, Douglas. It is also political, and you might think I'm a psycho, but this is the kind of thing Benjamin Netanyahu really enjoy, because he was losing out. His country was against him, and just like Donald Trump they were scared he's going to start a war. Boy, you may think I'm crazy, but I don't think it has to be this way. I think he's pushed it far beyond what it had to be so that he could have what? The power. It's all about power. And, you know, ever since Abraham didn't have faith in God, this is my belief, and he went on, Sarah had him go into Hagar, her handmaiden, and this other element was introduced into the world. So now we have that element, and we have the other elements. Mm-hmm. So what is the solution? I think it's basically spiritual. Mm-hmm. I think prayer is the biggest thing that we can do. You know, this general from Texas Tech, General C.Q. Brown.
Oh, okay.
One of the things he said when he went into, they finally got him in to be the first chief of staff. He said, "Mo, we really don't want to go into Israel. That's one thing we don't want to do. That's been a fear. You know what? We're already in a global war. It's already here. The question is how far is it going to go? Are we going to be able to contain it? I think that it's spread out so far now that only the power of God. Only the power of God. I think it's beyond politicians now. Mm-hmm. We got to pray, continue to pray. And I love Sister Briana there. Preston University. You know, you remind me of Michelle Obama. Preston, come back to Chicago.
The same in the same. I said Michelle Obama and I actually had the same major and the same minor in similar topics for our senior thesis.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome. That is so awesome and yeah, so wonderful.
Listen, we're gonna let me talk this back, Brother Austin. We're gonna break. Briana has to leave, but I wanted to continue this conversation since this is Veterans Day, and I think we're in some fertile territory here for conversation. And if you guys are available, I'm gonna close out this show, which closes out top of the hour. Thank Briana for being here, for the leadership. Tell you, Briana, we're looking forward to seeing you here in Minnesota at the end of the week for the Justice Conference that you're being the keynote speaker for. And then I want to reconvene this meeting in about another minute or two. Dr. B, is that okay with you?
It's perfectly fine with me. And I really want to say, Briana, thank you for showing up today and letting us know justice is with the veterans, but it's also on the other side of those military side. So you're still fighting a battle. It's just a different battleground.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed sharing space with you all.
Thank you.
Great. And Brother Douglas, Brother Austin, can you all stay a few minutes more?
Absolutely.
Okay,
yeah, I can stay a couple more minutes.
Let me do that then. Let me tell everyone, thanks for listening to this. We're going to continue this conversation in a few minutes. If you're listening and want to join the conversation, send a note in at the comment. Just Right is making comments. He said, God bless you for serving in Vietnam, and made a comment about Jim Crow, and said amen to a couple of thoughts he said. Cameron, thank you for, I think that's for joining the show as well. But if you want to make a comment, we appreciate the comment. Go to the comments and we'll post your comment and share it. I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Conversation with Al McFarlane. We're going to continue this conversation in about just a minute. So stick around. Tell somebody that this conversation is going on. We're talking about veterans and justice. We'll see you in a minute.